Please try not to stray into those. And then when we reach that item, I shall read out the necessary clause. Again, we shall vote on it as we would ordinarily do. And once we become confidential, I will pause for a while until we have confirmation from officers we're no longer streaming publicly. And then we'll go on to discuss those items. So I hope that all makes sense. Let us begin. So apologies for absence, we have none. Declarations of interest by members and officers, and as to the party whip, I'm aware that Councillor Wendalls will have an interest with regard to Arkwood developments. Now, pause. Are there any
Chairman, can I declare an interest on item 5, Arkwood developments, as a director of Arkwood, please?
Thank you, Councillor Wendalls. Are there any more declarations of interest?
Chairman, same again, item 5, Arkwood developments.
Thank you, Mr. Coley. There being no more, declarations of intention to record the meeting. Uncannily, we are. I'm assuming nobody else wishes to do so. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 20th of February. Is it your... Not going to ask, does anybody disagree with taking those as a record of the decision and the meeting? Then we'll move on to the first item for decision. That is Arkwood Developments, Bowbridge Road Development, Newark, and I believe we're joined now by Mrs. White.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is an open report, and its purpose is to update members on the progress being made relating to the first development site at Bowbridge Road in Newark that's being taken forward by the Council's development company, Arkwood Developments Limited. As you've already mentioned in your introduction, there is an exempt report that relates to the same item, and that will be dealt with later in the agenda. But basically and essentially, the report updates members on two elements of the development. Firstly, the land transfer, and that's the transfer of the land from the council to Arkwood Developments, and where we are with that in terms of an additional issue relating to remedial works that are required on site to decontaminate a small section of the land, and then also the loan arrangements between the council and the company to facilitate the development. So really it's an update to members, and the recommendation is simply to note the progress being made.
Thank you, Mrs. White. I have no further comments as the relevant committee chairman. Councillor Peacock, do you have any comments or questions? I shall assume not. Therefore, I shall move the item. Oh, Councillor Peacock.
Yeah. Sorry, David. Mute on mute. No further comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Then I shall move the item. It is seconded by Councillor Girling. Now, alphabetically, I shall go through asking for those to shout out for, amend, or against. Councillor Clark-Smith.
For.
Councillor Girling.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Myself, for. Councillor Peacock.
For.
Councillor Wendalls.
Abstain, as I've declared an interest.
Thank you. And Councillor White.
For.
Thank you very much. That is complete. Then move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you, Mrs. White. Bear with me 1 second. That being item 6, the possible purchase of land, Bowbridge Road, Newark. I believe we're now joined by Mr. Lamb.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. You'll be aware that this is a matter we've considered previously, and it is regarding a joint venture, essentially, that we were looking at between ourselves as freehold purchasers of 2 parcels of land and the Sherwood Forest Hospital Trust, who wanted to then take a lease on the land to provide additional car parking. That car parking was in response to 2 matters. firstly, patient feedback and the difficulties of parking generally in the area, and secondly, to allow them, by providing extra parking, to potentially increase their clinical range of service. You will note from the last meeting that you authorised officers to be able to offer up to a maximum amount to purchase both land parcels. That amount has been offered and declined. So too has various alternative offers for a leasehold disposal, which does not work in officers' opinion for either ourselves or indeed the trust are of the view that that is not something they would wish to enter into. So the recommendation that you have before you is that that offer remains for a time limited period, but it remains open for you to discuss whether you wish it to be still time limited. And then that offer is withdrawn, allowing the landowners of both those parcels of land to rely upon the market for a disposal.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Thanks, Matt. Again, relevant committee chairman, this is an issue of which we've had some interest. Councillors will recall going back. As Mr. Lamb quite rightly explains, we hope and we understand that through the NHS, if they had increased parking, for whatever metric this is, it would enable them to deliver further services at Newark Hospital, which I think we would all welcome, both for the hospital itself and the patients. And we were also quite keen to try and deliver some off the main road provision for residents of Bowbridge Road, recognising that it will be a main trunk arterial, if you like, once the link road is completed, bringing traffic through to Newark, and it's quite a pinch point at the top there. I hope councillors will recall also from previous reports on this, we have commercial stratagem and others as a council that determines what level of return we might look to. We had reached out to Sherwood Forest Hospital Trust, with whom there have been previous negotiations that haven't succeeded, in order to come together and have a sort of a joint lease arrangement with them, but we required the freehold to give us the certainty and the guarantee, not just for that lease, but for the proper return and security for the council, both present and going forward. It is therefore my opinion, and I shall open it up to the committee presently, that to iterate that this is a maximum offer, both according with our strategies and the advice of officers, is proper. And I think that it be time limited is also proper in order to bring relevant parties to the table. And as Mr. Lamb describes, in order that the landowner may go elsewhere if he, they and their agents so choose. I would find that regrettable. I'm quite certain we all would, that this is a contract negotiation. And sometimes to have that deadline does mean that minds are focused in a way that can be useful. Potentially, if there were some small leeway given the current situation, I'm sure we might accept that. But I will be moving these recommendations. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, I'm supportive of the recommendations, and it's a sensible way to move forward, as you've outlined. And I'd be interested if we do withdraw our offer, that what it looks like on the market as well. But yeah, I'm supportive of the recommendations.
Thank you, Paul. Any further committee members have any questions or comments?
Chairman, Roger speaking.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
So you go first.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, no, I agree with what's been said, actually. I mean, the actual purchase of would be very useful for the surrounding area, and the council with providing extra car parking. But I think concentration on mind with the agent at this moment in time. So I don't think it's got any more value whatsoever, the way the world is at the moment. So I think the recommendations are fully intact.
Thank you, Roger. Councillor Girling.
Thank you, Leader. I've just got one question, really, because obviously the time limit, once it comes to that time limit, are we saying then after that time we were just withdrawing and we're not interested? Or are we saying at that time that we're withdrawing and it will not go back to the maximum? Because if I was the developer, I might be minded to take the bluff, go on the market, see if we can get any more. If we can't get it anymore, come back to the council. And it sort of gives them a sort of a safety net, if you like, Is there some way, Matt, that we can do it that the maximum offer is the maximum offer? It finishes at this point, and at that point it goes back to our original offer, and that way it might jolt them a bit more.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes, through you, Chair. The way that we've worded it in the minute, Councillor Girling, is that offer falls off a cliff on the deadline date. And if they do want to come back post a marketing exercise, we may have a different view on the value that we think it is worth, and we would bring it back to this committee.
Councillor Girling, in content with that reply?
Yes, I am, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further committee members wish to comment or ask a question? Thank you. So the recommendation is item 6 of the report, as has been described, that is to confirm the maximum offer and also that withdrawal date of the 18th of April. I move that as committee chairman. It is seconded by Councillor Girling. I shall now again go through each committee member alphabetically. Councillor Clark-Smith.
4.
Councillor Girling.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Peacock.
4.
Councillor Wendels. Are you with us, Tim?
Yes, I am. Sorry, you're cutting out. I didn't hear my name called. But 4.
And Councillor White.
4.
Thank you. And myself. That is unanimous. Thank you, committee. We now move on to the next item, York Drive regeneration, and we're being rejoined by Mrs. White with Cara Clarkson to assist should we have specific questions. Karen.
Thank you, Chairman. Now, this report brings members up to speed with where we are in terms of the regeneration project at York Drive. As members will be aware from previous reports, we've just embarked on a very detailed procurement process in order to secure a preferred developer partner to help the council take the project forward. Now, we've received detailed tenders from 4 developers, and they are listed in paragraph 3.1 of the report, all of which were very keen to become the council's preferred development partner. The tenders that we have received, and they were received in February, have been robustly scrutinised and assessed in detail, and indeed Cara Clarkson has been the officer that's taken that forward, together with assistance from external expert financial advisors. And the detail of those tenders that have been received is in the exempt report for very good commerciality and confidentiality reasons. We've put that in the exempt report. But if I can take you to paragraph 3.4, that details the scoring that has taken place against all 4 of the tenders. That's been done in this open report on an anonymous basis, but really what we've tried to do is to put as much in the public domain as possible so you can see how those tenders have been scored and how they have come out. Paragraph 4.1 of the report highlights that if the committee today were to approve the selection of the preferred developer, the next step for the council and its officers is to begin detailed contract negotiations. Now, that's subject to a 10-day standstill following today's decision that we have to do in line with procurement practice. But I just want to highlight that at this stage, the council isn't committed contractually, obviously, to proceeding with the scheme, but it does allow us to move ever forward and towards that goal of getting into a contractual situation with the preferred developer. So paragraph 4.2 of the report just brings members up to speed with where we are with resident engagement. We have kept residents and the resident panel on York Drive fully engaged with the process of assessing the tenders. Indeed, quite a lot of tenant reps and tenants came with us to visit the sites that the four tenderers had put forward of other sites that they are developing, just so that residents could get a good idea about how they deal with this sort of scheme in other parts of the country. So residents were able to put forward questions that we put forward to those developers, and so they've been fully engaged in that tender evaluation process. There is some information there in terms of, in paragraph 4.3, on the decant and demolition proposals. And this involves where we're having to move residents out as part of the scheme that are currently living in homes that are going to be demolished as part of the programme. And we're working on a basis that we will move people only once. So they'll move out of the homes that are to be demolished and into their new homes. So that's very much part of our thinking. So in paragraph 4.5, we've just made a note there to make members aware that we have had quite a lot of interest from residents and from the ward councillors that they would be very supportive of a wider scheme in future years in terms of the regeneration of the estate. And what we've been very mindful to do, that all the plans so far would not preclude a widening of the regeneration project should the money become available for that, and if members were to support that in future years. So we just wanted to reassure members on that. Most importantly, I think, particularly in the current situation that we have with the coronavirus and the impact that is having currently and may well have in future months to come. The paragraph headed Risk Management, paragraph 5, just sets out the two key risks that we have as officers highlighted with the project. We've got a comprehensive risk register in place for the project, but I wanted to highlight the two key risks around this project. And one relates to the market conditions. Clearly, the whole crux of this project relies upon the preferred developer being able to uplift the sales values of the market housing, because that will help to cross-subsidise the affordable housing that's to be replaced on the estate, and it will also assist with the regeneration elements of the project. Now, I just want to reassure members that all of the four tenderers that have submitted their bids are all very experienced in being able to deliver regeneration projects and have achieved uplift in market values. And in some areas where you would be quite surprised that has been able to be achieved. So that's just really to give some reassurance to members. But I have to say that clearly this is an issue that may well be impacted upon in future months relating to the impact of the coronavirus on the market as that sort of goes forward. The other key risk is construction costs. In terms of the tenders that have been submitted, all four bidders have been very thorough in terms of trying to set out their construction costs. But it's fair to say that once we have selected a preferred developer, there will need to be some on-site groundworks done, and that will help inform the robustness of the construction costs that they have included in their bids. And similarly, the coronavirus may impact upon the availability of and the cost of on-site labour and the cost of materials. So those are the two key risks that I really wanted to highlight. But in paragraph 5.1.3, the reason that as officers we are continuing to put this forward with recommendations to members that we continue with this project is that I think it's really important that we do maintain our business and local government decision making, bringing forward a project that will have significant positive social and economic impacts on the community. So the recommendations are in paragraph 10 of the report. But just to, and I know we are asking you to approve the selection of a preferred tenderer, but I just want to reassure members that if, as we proceed with the negotiations forward to contract, if there are significant variances in what we know and what we've taken into account at the moment, then it will come back to members to make a further decision if we're going outside the parameters of what we believe the tenders show us at the moment. So happy to try and answer questions. I know Cara is on hand to answer questions too, Chairman.
Thank you, Karen. In the first instance, Councillor Wendell.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome the report and the progress that's being made with the project. It's a very important project. It's good to see that progress is being made. We've now got the tenders in, and I certainly would agree developer A is the clear winner from the information provided, so we'll certainly support the permanent partner, which will enable us to continue to progress the project, which is equally with regard to disturbance payments. I think they're reasonable, fair, and would again support the suggestions and recommendations made in the report, Chairman. But overall, welcome progress being made. It is an important project and really do want to see it continue to progress. Clearly, there will be difficulties with the current coronavirus situation, which we'll need to navigate our way through, but I'm confident that we can do it. And yes, I'm happy to move the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you, Tim. And I second those later when time provides. Can I just remind members that, of course, there is the exempt report later that does name the relevant people. So if we could just remember for now they're A, B, C, and not to discuss some of the financials around that. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, again, the recommendations are fine. There's been we've all followed this project closely, and it is refreshing that we are taking a cautious approach. It's well defined, well detailed. It feels like we all know exactly where we're at with it, and it's also, again, I always mention it. It's good that we're carrying the local community along with the project as well, and they're well informed. So thanks for the hard work, Karen, and all those other people that's involved with that.
Thank you, Paul. Any other members of committee?
Chairman.
If I may, Chairman, I'm sorry.
Councillor Girling.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I fully support this recommendation. I think it's absolutely vital, as Karen says, that we continue to show that it's business as usual as much as we possibly can. York Drive has for a long time needed to be regenerated, and this is showing the council's commitment to that. I'd like to put a thanks out really to the panel that were involved, the resident panel which were involved in selecting the preferred developer. So well done to you lot for doing this. It's brilliant. So I look forward to actually when all this nonsense is over, that we can actually start putting a shovel in the ground and start seeing this all happening. Well done, Karen, and everybody involved.
Thank you, Keith.
Chairman, can I?
Oh, sorry, Karen.
Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do feel rather guilty about taking plaudits because Cara has done the lion's share of this work. So a big thank you to Cara. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We'll withdraw the thanks to yourself and pass them over to Cara. Councillor Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, no, again, a great project and well needed for York Drive. I was just going to ask the question, how much thought had gone into from the developer about energy efficiency builds and reducing the carbon of the new property going forward in the future?
Cara, Chairman, would Cara be best to answer that question?
I think so.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me, yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. What each of the developers put forward their proposals with regards to energy efficiency. So they've all had a consideration for that. The standards that the properties will be built to will obviously be much more efficient than the current standards in terms of insulation. But they're also looking to future-proof these. So the particular developer that we're looking at, looking to future-proof them for example, the addition of solar or photovoltaic panels at a future date. So we will have further detailed design to do between now and entering into contract, and we'll bear in mind any opportunities that there are to incorporate energy efficient measures. But as it currently stands, we've already started to look at that.
Thank you, Cara. Councillor Jackson, you can take that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I just come back? Does that mean that the infrastructure for the possibility of putting photovoltaics on the roof will be built into the houses going forward? And then the panels can be fitted at a later date, but the infrastructure and wiring is already there?
That's what we're looking at the minute for the affordable homes, yes.
Okay, it does make sense when we're building new houses that we do as much as we possibly can to make them as carbon neutral as possible.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks, Cara. Any other members of committee? Karen and Cara, I have a question. Going through the risk matrix, which is very comprehensive, and in particular elements around decanting, construction cost, etc., you've excellently answered already. There is one risk in there, I think it was 1.04, which I'm a little curious about. And the risk is identified as a loss of political support. If I remember the titles correctly, the likelihood of that occurring is a 2, which is low, but I would have hoped it might be a 0 or a 1, rather as this debate is reflecting. So I'm curious as to why that's scored at a 2. Anyone?
Karen, shall I take that one?
Yes, fine.
Yeah. It's scored as a 2 just to reflect, I guess. Well, we've got the impact as a 3, and the likelihood of that as a 2. I think it's a fair comment, Chair, and it's something that we could, given today's decisions, if we are able to take forward the recommendations, we could definitely review that and hopefully drop that down even lower.
I think that would be welcome and reflect the cross-party support within the council to make this happen. That's excellent. Thank you, Cara. Okay, so Councillor Wendels has proposed the recommendations. To briefly recap for those listening, that is delegate approval for the relevant developer, as has been scored. Thereafter, delegation to officers to negotiate and sign that contract in consultation with relevant councillors. And then finally, we're approving the option of a lump sum for the disturbance payment for those residents that are being decanted. So Councillor Wendels has moved that. I will second it. And here we go alphabetically. Is somebody wanting to speak there? No. Councillor Clark-Smith.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Girling.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Myself, 4. Councillor Peacock.
4.
Councillor Wendels.
4.
Thank you. And Councillor White.
4.
Thank you very much. There we are, another unanimous decision. So I do think that issue in the risk matrix can be picked up. Moving then to the next policy item for decision, item 8, the footpath and access realignment and levelling at Epperstone Manor. And I believe we are now to be joined again by Mr. Lamb.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm afraid this one is a long-running saga, and it may predate some of those on the committee. We're hoping to get towards the end of this saga, subject to this decision today. The easiest way for me to talk members through this is if you would turn to figure 2 which is just above paragraph 2.4 in the report on page 35. And essentially, we are in a position whereby this site has taken over 12 years to be able to be delivered. Now, given the number of units involved and the size of the estate, that is incredible in terms of its ability to deliver. It crosses the previous recession, and it led to a position whereby the open space, which is coloured green on that figure 2, and the access there too, which is a footpath coloured green, and then what isn't coloured is a maintenance strip that runs alongside it, was not provided as it should have been by the developer. Through previous discussions of this committee, albeit previous councils, it was moved that in return for a relaxation of some Section 106 matters, some land would be given over and a land swap would take place. Now, what you can see from that figure is that the tiny red dashed area, and forgive me for that, but you will see the red area on the curvature of the footpath as it turns the corner. That land is now in the official ownership, and what I mean by that is registered title of the developer. And that land now needs to be transferred to the council. So there is nothing that this committee needs to do in that respect, other than be aware that we as officers have requested that land transfer in accordance with the originally envisaged transfer. The issue was that as unregistered land, there was some dispute as to the developer's ability to transfer it. So the red area should have now been resolved. The highlighted yellow area that members can see on that figure is actually land that, as a matter of fact, whether it was a matter of intention or not, is currently in the ownership of a third party, which isn't the council or the developer. That third party and the neighbouring resident there is very clear, as they are fully entitled to do, to say that they wish that land to be annexed into their garden area, which means that the footpath and the estate fencing, and what I mean by that for those members that haven't seen it, is the metal railings, the quite attractive railings that you get around estates, funnily enough. That fencing would have to be realigned as part of the package. You will see that what we have had priced is 3 different options for type of fencing, but frankly, the only one that would be palatable visually and for the community would be fencing that matches the existing, which is more expensive to deliver. Now, there is an ability and there remains an ability to pursue the developer for these costs. There are some risks of pursuing that, which are dealt with separately and which you can see. But the recommendations are clearly set out that what we are seeking is authorisation to be able to proceed with the land swap, authorisation to be able to appoint contractors to realign the fencing and do any earthworks that are associated and required with that. Authorisation for the budget associated with that to cover it, which for the avoidance of doubt is recommendation C for a budget up to £12,212 plus VAT. And finally, for our business manager of legal services to pursue the developer to recover all reasonable costs. And that will not only be the budgeted costs, but any associated legal costs therein. Hope that's helpful, Chairman.
Very much so. Thank you, Mr. Lamb. And the first instance, therefore, is Ward Member Councillor Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This has been going on for a long time, and I've had a few site meetings with Karen over the years about this. I mean, I don't really want to blame Councillor Wendell for selling it for a large sum of money just before the recession in 2008, which the developer then had problems with getting his money back to building. And there was originally another pathway into the Netherland but then he applied for extra plan permission, and then which had then made the path have to be removed. And he did put in this estate fencing, which is a nice footpath, but you can see the line wasn't the correct line he used, but it was only 2 meters wide. And the access to the field was a footpath and had no access or maintenance for the village to get down to the meadow field or any maintenance of that field. And where 4 meter wide or 3 to 4 meter wide access, so you get a tractor and a machine down there for maintenance, it is definitely required. And it is, and I say thank you for Matt Lamb for all his hard work over this. I don't know if Matt was a member of the council when this first started, to be perfectly honest, but it's been going on for a long, long time. We seem to come to a conclusion now. The developer does play hardball. He's fallen out with the third-party landowner over it. Else, it would have been, I think, a lot simpler project to complete. But we are where we are with this, and I would like to recommend that we agree to the proposals.
Thank you, Roger. Any other members of the committee? Okay. So I'll second those recommendations that are at paragraph 8 on pages 37 and 38. And Mr. Lamb told us, but by way of a quick recap, 4 recommendations: the land plot, tractors, budget of just over 12,000, and seeking to recover legal costs. That being, somebody's agreeing. That being moved and seconded, again, I'll go through committee alphabetically. I think we might be able to hear a young lamb on that. Councillor Clark-Smith.
Support the recommendations for.
Thank you. Councillor Girling.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Myself, 4. Councillor Peacock.
4.
Councillor Wendalls. Tim.
4.
Thank you, Tim. And Councillor White.
4.
Thank you very much. Unanimous decision. Now we're on to finance items for decision, through then to item 9, the Warm Homes Fund bid outcome. And we're joined by either Mr. Coley or Mrs. White, or both.
Chairman, it'll be me, Sanjeev Kohli. Good afternoon, Chair. Just this report is there to inform members of our successful bid to the Warm Homes Fund for £97,488. This is to enable gas connections in up to 43 park homes in Ollerton who are currently using solid fuel or liquid gas heating and cooking systems. The details of the workings of the grant and also the conversion program, which is planned to be completed in the summer of this year, is included in the report. The recommendation is to establish the budget of £97,488 in the council's current capital programme. And also the financial implications are there to assure members that payment will only be made to Agility Eco, who are our delivery partners, once the funding has been received from the Warm Homes Fund. Chair, that's all I have to say to the report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Sanjeev. In the first instance, do you have any comment, Councillor Wendalls?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'd really like to welcome the outcome of the bid and congratulate the officers who've been involved in putting the bid together. It will make a big difference to the residents concerned in these. There is a considerable cost difference. I think it's about 25% between LPG and mains gas, so it will certainly help fuel quality issue, and I think it's an excellent outcome and very much support, and would like to move the recognitions that we note the outcome and set up a budget in the capital programme to work to go ahead, which of course will be funded from the the outcome of the bid. So there's no cost to the council.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Peacock?
Yeah, just supporting the comments of support and just to, I suppose, not make people realise, but the residents living over there in Fairfield Park, they are pretty much they pay really high energy bills, and it feels to me sometimes that they're at the mercy of the landlord, and I just hope that the improvements that this welcome funding brings does indeed pass on in those financial improvements for them. But certainly it should improve their quality of life and reduce their fuel poverty. So yes, brilliant piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Any other members of committee? Then it has been proposed by Councillor Wendels. I shall second the recommendation and again alphabetically take the vote. Councillor Clark-Smith.
4.
Councillor Girling.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Myself, 4. Councillor Peacock.
4.
Councillor Wendels.
4.
Councillor White.
4.
Again, unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Coley. The next item, finance item for decision then, number 10, the allocation and approval of savings accrued as part of the Housing Management Implementation Project. And we are joined again by Mrs. White.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this report picks up the proposal that flows from the decision of the council to bring back the housing management service back in-house, and the savings and efficiencies that were anticipated as a result of that decision. And indeed, those efficiencies have started to come through, and we are keeping a good record of those. But as you'll recall, the committee, when it made its decision to bring the service back in-house, also recognised that those efficiencies would be reinvested in tenant services. So what's before you is a report that proposes how we will deliver that commitment, and we're actually proposing a framework approach to determine how those savings and efficiencies will be expended, and that is attached to the report. But what we are proposing to you as a committee is that you delegate authority to the Homes and Communities Committee to approve the allocation of those efficiencies to appropriate areas of expenditure, given the remit of Homes and Communities Committee. So as you'll see in the report, we had prepared a report for Homes and Communities to consider this and make a recommendation to your committee, but that committee had to be adjourned or deferred because of the corona outbreak. But I'm sure the chairman of that committee will be able to confirm that his support and the vice chairman's support to what's being proposed to you today. So the recommendations are in paragraph 7, and that's to give delegated authority to the Homes and Communities Committee. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Karen. In the first instance, as committee chairman, Councillor Wendels.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Karen's absolutely right. I do fully support the report. And although the Homes and Communities Committee was unfortunately cancelled on the 16th of March, when therefore we weren't able to consider this report in detail, I was involved in working very closely with the officers to prepare the report, and do fully support particularly the framework which we're proposing to use to determine how we allocate the savings, bringing the housing management company in-house. We are focusing on the 3 areas that tenants have told us are most important to them, and that's central in that framework which we are suggesting will be utilised. And I'd also just like to stress, and the details are all in the report, of course, that there are substantial savings which are already being seen coming through from Sherwood homes back in house, and that's tenants' money that housing revenue account, which largely which will be spent on tenant services, and will be basically spent on the housing revenue account and on the tenants. So that is very much. I also welcome. I think it's important that we have clear member involvement in how those savings are allocated. Will be one-off items, which can then be spent as one-off items the following year. Some will be recurring items, and the balance there, and again the framework refers to that. But by delegating authority to the Homes and Communities Committee, it retains clear member involvement in ensuring that those priorities are put in place, and members can continue to be involved in ensuring or determining how they can be spent in conjunction with the relevant officers. So very much support the report and the recommendations, and I'm happy to move the recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, I welcome the recommendations as well. I suppose if anything, I'd like to ask is probably around the quick win situation. We're at 5.34 on page 49, and it seems to me a great idea that we reinvest some money in highly visible, relatively low cost one-off time spends. But the amount of money there, £20,000 per year, it feels to me like we're not going to be able to do a lot with £20,000 that will affect the geography of our of the district and the council houses that we manage. And I'm just interested in. I'd be interested in going forward, I suppose, in seeing some of the ideas around that and how the spend of that limited amount of money would benefit all tenants in all communities. So if Karen can shed light on that, or maybe it's just something that we'll see in the future.
Karen?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think some of it has to be developed, Chairman, in terms of what those quick wins will be. But I can give you a couple of, certainly one example of the type of activity that we're thinking about, and actually have done some of this as well. So, for instance, on some of our larger housing estates, where we know that that there is some work to be done in terms of enhancing the environment, in terms of the tidiness, the maintenance of boundaries to gardens, and that sort of things that are relatively economic to deliver, and we could do this under quick wins, but have perhaps been a little bit neglected. So we're focusing on those sorts of things, but certainly we can bring more detailed ideas and proposals to the Homes and Communities Committee, so that you can see examples of where that could be achieved. And these are small, relatively small things, but make a huge difference to the people that live on those estates and in those council properties.
Thank you, Karen. Are you happy with that, Paul?
Yeah, thanks. I think it is a question to suck it and see where we go with it.
Thanks, Paul. Karen? Other members of committee?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Councillor Girling?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think I welcome this report. I think it shows our commitment that we said to the tenants that actually the money we save will go back into them and improving their housing and things like that. I just wondered if is one of the things we also made a commitment to, Karen, was the tenant engagement. Is some of this money being used towards that? And can you just explain how that would work, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it is identified that certainly an element of the efficiency savings would go to further developing and improving upon the tenant engagement that we currently have. And the Homes and Communities Committee, and I'm sure Tim, as the chairman, can give further information on this, but they have appointed a joint advisory group with members from the Homes and Communities Committee and members of the tenant board members of the outgoing company to pull together and research how that might look in the future, and then report back to Homes and Communities Committee. And that's already started its work. So I'm sure that will come forward very shortly. It's a big piece of work because we want to get it right, and we want to increase the reach of that tenant engagement, whilst not damaging the current engagement that we have, because we want to build on what we have rather than completely throw out what we have at the moment and go to something new. But we're very mindful that there are lots of tenants that want to engage with the service that they receive in a different way. So that's all being explored, but that will be reported back to Homes and Communities.
Thank you, Karen. Any other members of the committee? Thank you. So the recommendations have been proposed by Councillor Wendels, they being to note progress on the transfer and the second tranche, to approve the framework, 20,000 for quick wins, and spend from efficiencies going forward would go to Homes and Communities for approval. I'll second those recommendations, and again now go through members of the committee alphabetically. I think we know who's first. Councillor Clark-Smith.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Girling.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Myself for. Councillor Peacock.
For.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Wendels.
For.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor White. Councillor White.
Sorry, I dropped my mouse. For.
Not a problem. Thank you. That is all. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So the next item on the agenda is for noting. This is an urgency item, and I think members will recall that we'd approved the concessions policy with regard to the partners that co-occupy Castle House with us, to ensure that costs were not excessive for them, but to have a standard policy in place. The decision was taken because of these strange times, and indeed some of those services, Citizens Advice and others, having a lot of people staying at home. You'll see the decision there to suspend the implementation of that decision hereafter. I trust everyone in committee is all right with that. If not, somebody speak now. Excellent, thank you. Right. There are no finance items for information. Shortly, I shall read out the recommendation to go into confidential session. I think before we do, thank you to any members of the public, all three of them that might be listening to this. I think we should also thank the officers that are providing us with advice, Democratic Services for enabling this, and very much the long forgotten team that we have in IT for all the technology enablement and, let's be honest, guidance that they're giving us through this process. I hope this also demonstrates that as a council committed to maintaining transparency on our decision, much as we have done previously. Councillor Jackson?
Oh, after you finish, Chair, I would like to say something, that was all. Sorry.
Oh, thank you. Okay, won't be long. Thereafter, of course, as we keep reminding people, keep well and stay safe. And then tonight, I think we're all being encouraged again to hang out of our windows and to thank those in NHS. So pleased to hear news networks today, but actually those thanks are going further than just NHS. Not that they're not warranted, quite rightly we should support them, but actually everybody in public services, and even those still working in supermarkets, require our thanks for what is going on presently. So I think all of us as councillors at Newark and Sherwood District Council would welcome that those applauses are pertinent to our own colleagues now as well for everything that they're continuing to do. So before I read out the recommendation, Councillor Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. No, just along those lines, actually, as a councillor, just thank you for the support that we've had from the council officers. I mean, I have to say both county and district, actually, in these unprecedented times. The support and help has been fantastic, and the information we've got has been fantastic, and we've been able to help lots of people who were in need of it. So I mean, just to put on record a big thank you from me, and I think other councillors as well, for the help we've received from officers.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
David, could I come in on that, David?
Councillor Peacock, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, just an extension of that. Our council staff, our colleagues have been so supportive throughout the last few weeks, and as they've worked over and above. I'd also like to express thanks to all the people, all the communities that's out there across our district, who are pulling together, who are getting people's medication, who are going out doing little shopping trips, who are shouting over the garden fence, making sure that their neighbours and their friends and people have got somewhere to talk to, which obviously contributes to maintain their health, mental health, as well as their physical health. And you know, we don't need to forget that. Lots of people have been mobilised across the district, and lots of people are coming forward and volunteering their time to help others, and I think that's brilliant, and I think it's fantastic for the district.
Well said, Paul. So I shall now be recommending to committee that we consider resolving that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3, part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act. So moved and seconded by Councillor Girling. Again, alphabetically, please, those in favour. Councillor Clark-Smith.
4.
Councillor Girling.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Myself, 4. Councillor Peacock.
4.
Councillor Wendels.
4.
Tim and Councillor White.
4.
Thank you. That again is unanimous. The committee has now resolved to discuss the confidential items. We'll take a short breather while we wait for an officer to confirm that we're no longer streaming live publicly.